Welcome back, Pauls. Are you ready for the next chapter? It's chapter 8, A Forgotten Secret. Nancy screamed for help, hoping to attract the farmer's attention. She expected momentarily to be bitten by the angry dog, but to her great relief, the animal did not harm her. The youngest slit's sudden fall has caused the puppy to fly from her arms. With a leap, its mother was at the pup's side. She grabbed the baby by the back of its neck and trotted off towards the barn. Oh, that was a narrow escape. Nancy took a deep breath as she got to her feet, brushed herself off, and ruefully surveyed her treat in a sweater. By this time, the man on the tractor, having changed directions, saw the fracas and came running. He apologized for the dog's action, but Nancy said quickly, "It was my fault. I should have set the pup down. Its mother probably thought I was trying to dog-nap her baby." "Possibly." Nancy explained why she had picked up the little animal, and the farmer said he would look at the cut later. "I'm glad you weren't hurt," he added. "Thanks for being such a good scout about it." "Did you come to see me or my brother?" he asked. "I'm Fred Matthew." Nancy gave her name and added that she was acquainted with the Turner sisters and others who had been told they would have benefit under Josiah Crowley's will. "My dad, the lawyer Carlson Drew, and I are working on the case. We believe there might have been a later will than the one presented by Mr. Topham and would like to find it. And you came to see if William and I could give you a clue." Fred's bright blue eyes sparkled boyishly. "That's right, Mr. Matthew. Also, did Mr. Crawley ever tell you he was going to leave you some money?" "Indeed he did." At this moment another man came from the house, and Fred introduced him as his brother, William. Both were tall, spare, and strong muscled. Though their hair was grey, the men's faces were youthful and unwrinkled. "Let's sit down under the tree here and discuss this," Fred suggested, leading the way to a group of rustic chairs. He told William of Nancy's request, then asked him, "Did cousin Josiah ever give you any idea he would make a will in which ye were not beneficiaries?" "No, I thought one would come to light when he died. To tell the truth, Miss Drew, Fred, and I were thunderstruck, and at the will we left everything to the Tophams. That wasn't what cousin Josiah led us to believe." "It certainly wasn't," Fred spoke up. "But I guess William and I counted our chickens before they were hatched. We just about made ends meet here with our small fruit farm. Help and equipment cost such a lot. One thing we always wanted to do but couldn't afford was to travel. We thought we would use the money from cousin Josiah to do that. But our dreams bubble burst," said William. "No trips for us." Nancy smiled. "Don't give up your hope. Dad and I haven't." She wasn't disappointed that the brothers could offer her no clues about a place to look for another will. A little later, she left the farm and returned home. "No new evidence," she told her father. "Let's hope Mr. Abbey Rowan has some." Early the next morning, she set off for the elderly women's home and reached her destination by asking directions of people living along West Lake Road. "This must be Abbey Rowan's house," Nancy told herself. "It fits the description." She climbed out of a car and stood before the one-story frame building, which was badly in deep of paint and repair. The yard around it was overgrown with weeds, and the picket fence enclosing the cottage saged dejectedly. The place looked deserted, Nancy mused. "But I'll see if Mr. Owens is at home." Nancy made her way to scraggly patch to the house and rapped on the front floor. There was no response. After a moment, she knocked again. This time, a muffled voice called, "Who's there? If you're a peddler, I don't want anything." "I'm not selling anything," Nancy called out reassuringly. "Won't you let me in, please?" There was a long silence. Then the quivering voice replied, "I can't open the door. I've hurt myself and I can't walk." Nancy hesitated an instant before pushing open the door. As she stepped into the living room, she saw a fragile figure on the couch. Abby Rowan lay huddled under an old shawl, her withered face torn with pain. "I am Nancy Drew. I'm come to help you, Mrs. Rowan." The old lady turned her head and regarded Nancy with a stare of wonder. "You have come to help me?" she repeated unbelievingly. "I didn't think anyone would ever bother about old Abby again. Here, let me arrange the pillows for you." Gently, Nancy moved the old woman into a more comfortable position. "Yesterday I fell down the cellar stairs," Mr. Rowan explained. "I hurt my hip and sprained my ankle." "Haven't you had a doctor?" Nancy asked in astonishment. "No," Abby Rowan sighed. Not a soul have been here, and I couldn't get in touch with anybody. I have no telephone. Can you walk at all? Nancy asked. A little. Then your hip isn't broken, Nancy said in relief. Let's see your ankle. Oh my, it's swollen. I'll bandage it for you. Then that's a clean cloth in the closet in the kitchen, Abby told her. I haven't any regular marriage. You really should have a doctor, Nancy remarked. Let me drive you to one. I can't afford it, the old woman murmured. My pension check hasn't come and it's too small anyway. Let me pay the doctor, Nancy offered. Abby Rowan shook her head stubbornly. I'm not that charity. I would rather die first. Well, if you insist upon not having a doctor, I'm going to the nearest drugstore and get some bandaging and a few other things, Nancy told her. But before I go, I'll make you a cup of tea. There's no tea in the house. Then I'll get a box. What else do you need? I need most everything, but I can't afford anything right now. You might get me some tea and a loaf of bread. That's enough. You'll find the money in a jar in the cupboard. It's not very much, but if it's all I have. I'll be back in a few minutes, Nancy promised. She stopped in the kitchen long enough to examine the cupboards. With the exception of a little flour and sugar and a can of soup, there appeared to be nothing in the house at all. Nancy found that the money jar contained less than $5. I'll not take any of it, she decided. Quietly, the young slit slipped out of the back door. She drove quickly to the nearest store and ordered a stock of groceries. Then she stopped at the drugstore and purchased bandage and liniment. Reaching the cottage, she carried the supplies inside and adequately set about making Abby Rowan's more comfortable. She bathed the swollen ankle and bound it neatly with an antiseptic bandage. It feels better already, Mrs. Rowan told her gratefully. I don't know what would have happened to me if you hadn't come. Oh, someone would have drove in, said Nancy cheerfully. She went to the kitchen and in a short while prepared tea and a light lunch for the elderly women. As Abby Rowan ate the nourishing meal, Nancy was gratified to observe that almost immediately her patient became more cheerful and seemed to gain strength. She sat up on the couch and appeared eagerly to talk with Nancy. There aren't many folks willing to come in and help an old lady. If Joash Crowley had lived, things would have been different, she declared. I could have paid someone to look after me. It's strange that he doesn't provide for you in this will, Nancy replied quietly. She did not wish to excite the women by telling a real mission. Yet Nancy hoped that she might lead her tactfully into a discussion of Josiah Crowley's affairs without raising hopes which might never be realized. It's my opinion that Josiah did provide for me, Mrs. Rowan returned empathetically. Many a time he said to me, Abby, you'll never need to worry. When I'm gone, you'll be well taken care of, my will. And then everything was left to the Tophams. Nancy encouraged her to proceed. That was according to the first will, Abby Rowan stated. You mean there was another will? Nancy inquired eagerly. Of course. Why, I saw that will with my own eyes. You saw it? Nancy gasped. The old man nodded gravely. Mind, I didn't see what was in the will. One day, Joshua came to call and give me some money. Right off, I noticed he had a bunch of papers in his hand. Abby, he said, I have made a new will. I didn't bother with the lawyer. I wrote it myself. How long ago was that? Nancy asked quickly. Let me see. Abby Rowan frowned thoughtfully. I can't remember the exact date. It was this past spring. Anyway, Josiah hinted that he would done well by me. But Josiah, I said, aren't you real? It's regal to write it yourself. Of course it is, he said. A lawyer told me it was all right, just so long as I wrote it myself and signed it. But I did have it withstand. Do you know who witnessed the will? Nancy broke in. No, he didn't say. Haven't you any idea what became to the will? Nancy asked hopefully. Well, I remember Josiah did something about putting it where nobody could get it unless they had legal authority. But I really don't know what became of it. Are you certain that was all Mr. Crowley said? Nancy inquired gently. She recalled the Turner saying that Abby had become forgetful. The elderly woman shook her head and sighed. Many a night I have lain awake trying to think what else he say about where he would put the will. I just can't recollect. Try to think, Nancy begged. I can't remember, Abby Rowan murmured hopefully. I've tried and tried. She leaned against the cushion and closed her eyes, as though the effort has exhausted her. At that very moment, the clock on the mantel chimed 12. Abby's eye fluttered open and an old expression passed over her face. For an instant, she stared straight before her, then slowly turned her head and fastened her eyes on the clock. Oh my God, I think the will is in that clock. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Have a happy day, guys.